And we're back to ruin the internet with an absolute new show. How are you doing, Em? Can you hear me?
Good,
Good, there we
good. Yeah,
go.
I can hear you all
There we
right.
go. So the improvement is evident. So I should probably give a shout out to SaskTel. SaskTel was kind enough to provide us with a wireless modem, actually, to test out for our live hits for Go Nitro. And I promised that I would give it a test, and so far, so good. You can hear me, Em, and I can hear you, presumably.
Absolutely. No headphones required this time.
Apparently, I need headphones. I'm going to get an IFB piece. And now I got this nifty little stream deck, so we should be able to rock back and forth a lot faster so we're not stuck on one angle. I'm going to do a herald here from Red Green. Oh, here's another angle. Oop, and there's me, slightly out of frame. I don't I don't have the I don't actually have the God, I keep saying I don't actually have the teleprompter yet, so that'll arrive soon. So then I'll be able to actually see, and we'll be able to see anybody that wants to chat or anything like that. So that's pretty good. So I'm pretty happy about that. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Perfect. So I understand you're going to give us a little demonstration today as a goalie about the differences between
Yeah,
pads and
yeah.
injuries.
Well, I'm not actually going to be doing it myself. I've got a stand-in
Oh, cute.
here. I've got a ball-jointed doll, and so I've made some rudimentary goalie pads here using the handyman secret weapon.
Duct tape.
And so what I want to give a demonstration of, and then I'll put that back on the screen. And I'm wearing my Rick Hines hat because for the viewers that saw the hockey episode, they might have seen some stuff in the intro that didn't actually make any sense. The idea was that we were going to do an episode, a two-part episode. One part was going to be what it's like for a
Yep.
goaltender that's been goaltending for many, many, many
Mm-hmm.
years to try playing a different
Right.
position. And the biggest hurdle there is with
Right.
skates. And I wish that I could give a demonstration with the skates, but I don't actually have two separate pairs of skates right now to show you. But picture that a goalie skate blade is a perfect straight
Yep.
edge. And so anybody that's familiar with goalie skates or using goalie skates, they might find that there's a familiarity there, and the familiarity is with rollerblades or figure skates, which are two other types of similar feeling skates because of how much real estate the blade is taking up on the
Makes perfect
surface.
sense to me.
Uh, exactly. A hockey skate, they're made like this almost. They're made in a curve, almost like a crescent moon shape. If you look, there's a lot more curvature. So if you were to take a goalie skate and put it down on a flat
Yeah.
surface like a stainless steel workbench, and you were to put a hockey skate down and put that, and then look at it right along the edge, you would notice that only the center portion of the regular hockey skate is making connection with
Yeah,
the
I always
ice.
wondered about
So
that. It was something that I noticed.
yeah, and it's incredibly useful for power skating and things like that. They're made for quick maneuverability. The amount of blade that you have on the surface, if it's smaller and it's more centered like that, then you have the ability to turn on a dime and take off really quickly. But uh, it takes a little bit of getting used to. A lot of little boys and now little girls in Canada, they're getting used to skating. They're starting out with hockey skates to begin with, and so they're getting used to that type of skating from a very young age. And if they switched over to a figure skate or a goalie skate or a
Yeah.
rollerblade, that wouldn't be as bothersome as if you went the other way around. And
So that's just
so,
the shape, I guess,
uh,
say, in the way that the blade is, so that you can
yeah,
dig into the ice when you're going. Right.
exactly. And then what you don't notice going on behind the scenes is your body and your muscle memory and all of the little balance aspects that your muscles and your brain are learning how to deal with the skates. This is the same reason why practice makes perfect, why you get better playing over time, or why you get better skating over time, but it can do the opposite as well. So you can have my word on that. When I was 14 years old, I was my parents got me a fabulous pair of regular hockey skates. I was interested in skating. I was interested in hockey. I wasn't really sure which position I wanted to play. I just wanted to get out there and skate. And they bought me a pair of Bauer 1000s, and they were besides the blisters that I would get because I'm prone to that because of my foot
Yeah.
shape. I got used to them fairly quickly because I would get out there and skate almost every day or
Yep.
two. And I was the kid that was tearing up the ice and doing a stop, and the snow was flying into the glass. It was a lot of fun. And then when I decided to get into goaltending, I didn't want to start out with the wrong equipment. I wanted to start out in a scenario that it was very low stress. So I joined a house league team that was non-competitive, and I got a pair of fairly antique goalie skates. They were probably from the 1950s or 60s, but they were still made like regular goalie skates, and I used
Those would be the big
those.
leather
And
ones.
then, yeah, they were the old leather skates, and then they had a hard, I think it was like a plastic on the
Who made
outside
those ones?
to,
The ones that you had, do you remember?
yeah, and those were, I mean, people are considering the ones from the 90s the old kind
Yeah.
now. Those were
Everything's
those were even
relative, I guess.
older. Yeah, and so I got used to those fairly fast. Then my parents bought me another pair of Bauer goalie
Yep.
skates. And that was an investment back in the day. It was an investment at $499, I remember
Well,
these were.
hockey ain't cheap.
And yeah, and those were the ones that I wore until I don't know whether I sold them, but I still have them kicking around. But I did wear them in this episode
Yep.
briefly, which I'll go into. But so those skates felt very, very much like rollerblades. I would talk to my neighbor. The neighbors had three boys. One of them, two of them, I think, were in the military, and the youngest, he was avid at hockey in Toronto, and he would complain and complain about how he couldn't wear rollerblades in the summer because it would ruin him for hockey. And I didn't understand what he was talking about because I felt like it was so natural
Mm.
to jump back and forth between rollerblades and goalie skates. And it wasn't until I think 1996, 97, I had been using goalie skates for about 2, 3 years straight and had not put on my Bauer 1000s. And I had gone pleasure skating with some family friends and my father at Maple Leaf Gardens because they had,
I'm
something
jealous.
set
I
up. You
never
could,
got to go to Maple Leaf Gardens. By the time I was in Toronto and I went to school, it was gone. Like, well, it wasn't gone, but they were in the process of
they
turn.
weren't
No,
using
they
it for
weren't
that.
using it for that. No, no.
And I think they were still using it around then, but it was very close to the end of its
Yeah.
life. And um, pleasure skating and goalie skates is also not exactly all that fun. You see people doing it, you see goalies doing it because, and I'll tell you why very soon. But
How does a
the
goalie
problem
pleasure
with that,
skate? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut in. It was the first thing that popped into my mind was how does a goalie pleasure skate? It's like, well, you take and
well,
you
it's
put I just just curious.
I like to call it ice
Ice.
rollerblading.
Oh, that makes
Uh,
sense. Stance makes
yeah,
sense.
that's what
That
it.
makes sense to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and but the skates were made. They were made to be standing mostly still and have the pads on and have your knees and your legs separated. And that's how they're built to be on the ice.
Right.
So you go around skating for an hour or two, like if you were skating up the Rideau Canal. And what happened to me was uh, a big toe dislocation, what they call
Yeah.
bunions. The big toes dislocate, and then you get a heck of a lump. And it was so unbelievably red and painful
Oof.
that when I was done, you don't feel it because of the pressure. The pressure takes the pain away. So I took the skates, I started taking the skates off, and the pain was unbelievable. So what I did was I took the laces completely out of the
Yeah.
skates and pried them open to get my foot out, and it looked like I had cherry tomatoes stuck to either side of my foot. And I've never completely got, like, my foot is still not back to normal yet. I have to wear wide shoes, but it wasn't entirely because of that one day going out. It was, wearing them for years and years, for hours and hours. But that was probably the day that I noticed it the most. Um, so probably around 96, 97, my mother wants to go ice skating, regular ice skating, around in circles. Um, at the arena, they had a free skate on a
Yeah.
Sunday afternoon, and she says to me, "Oh well, don't bring the goalie skates because they look so clunky. You're gonna look ridiculous in that, and it's gonna be embarrassing. And why don't you wear the Bowers that we
You gotta
got you?
wear
You never
skates.
wear
Gotta
them
wear
anymore."
skates. You gotta wear something.
So
Hockey, like I said, hockey ain't
yeah.
cheap. It's not a cheap sport.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I'm thinking, okay, well, no, yeah, it's old time's sake, right? I'll put my blister bandages on. I looked like a paramedic when I would go in, either to play hockey or to skate. I would have these huge boxes of Next Care bandages and
Oh,
all these
jeez.
different sizes and these different tapes and things and multiple pairs of socks, and it would take me about 10 minutes to put all of these anti-blister
Yeah.
bandages on before I would get out there, or else I would end up with these blisters that were the size of a silver dollar on the arches of my feet, and then I would get bleeding ones in the back of
Well,
my
I got a
heels, like my
question for
feet.
you. How long does it take? How long did it take for you to break them in?
I What has it been, 20, 30 years or
20,
something? I'm
30
still
years?
waiting. They weren't made like the ones today where they stick them in an oven and then there was people on the team when I started getting really into it. There was people on the team that were so fanatical, and they would give all these stories about what they
Right.
would do. One girl said that she bought her skates and that she wore them in a hot bath. And that you
Do
know
you
that
think that
that's
she
the only way
did?
I could
Do you think
explain
that
some of
she
the
actually?
bathtubs that I've seen in some people's places, with all the chips out of them. I'll
Do you
tell you
think she
that. But
did?
um, and I don't know. And then there was another one that said that she slept in them, hopefully with the skate guards on. So there was people that would do some pretty remarkable things to try to break in skates in the
Holy
90s.
crap!
I put these
Seriously.
Bowers on to get out there with my mother, and I looked like I did when I was 5. I couldn't skate, and she was mortified. She didn't believe it. She thought I was fooling around.
Your
I think
mom
I,
did?
I
Your
could
mom
not
thought you were fooling
skate
around?
in these skates.
Your
Sorry?
mom thought that you were fooling around?
I cannot, I, I'm going to say, I think that she could not wrap her head around the fact that the last time that she had seen me in these skates, I was I was being the stereotype,
Oh,
tearing around the ice
okay.
and
Yeah,
coming to blinding halts,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
snow flying up into the glass. And that a few years later of playing hockey and getting out on a
Just because it was a
rink
different type of
5 or
skate.
6 times a
Just,
week, that all of a sudden I would put on these hockey skates and get out onto the
oof.
rink, and I looked like I had never skated before in my life, and she did not understand what the heck was
Just
going
because they were
on.
different
And
types of
I didn't.
skates. Just, is that pretty much it?
Yeah, and I didn't. I had never really looked closely at them. I didn't understand, and then all of a sudden it hit me. Oh, this is what my neighbor was telling me about with the rollerblades. It must be the
Uh-huh.
same with the goalie
That makes
skates.
sense. That I can understand. Makes
Yeah.
perfect sense to me.
So you see me in this episode at Rick Hines going out with Chase Trull. and he's basically teaching me how to skate again. And
Yeah, he was playing for the
um,
Oshawa Generals, right, in the OHL. Used to think he was.
yeah, I
I
believe
think it was
so.
Oshawa, yeah.
And I had trained with some of these
Right.
guys, not him, but some of the people from the same teams at Rick Hines back in the day. I picked Rick Hines because that's where I had learned, and that's where I'd really grown as a goaltender in the 96, 97 time.
Yeah.
And and I was so serious about it that I looked it up and said, oh, okay, well, the best school with the best rankings and the best reviews and all that was in
You got to
Ottawa.
tell that story about Dan Tessier of you stopping his pucks. You remember that 20 years later when we were at the Ottawa Police doing the episode stuff with him. He's a constable now.
Well, that was one of the fun things we would do at Rick Hines. We had these little competitions called shootout competitions, and all the goaltenders, and it was a very intensive program. I mean, we had video footage of doing particular maneuvers that we would all go over. We were on the ice probably around 6 hours a day. We did outdoor training. It was really intense. It was a fantastic program. And at the Ottawa program, they had players from the Ottawa 67s and players from the Montreal, no, not Montreal, it was the Gatineau Olympics. And then they had one guy that was up from Peterborough. And so, you know, we did a lot of intensive training.
Yeah.
And at the end of each week, there would be a shootout competition. And now I didn't know this at the time. I guessed. I ended up working for Rick Hines. That was my first job a few years later. But at the time, I didn't know. So I went out and I had won the shootout competition on the first week, and it was a 2-week program. And on the second week, there was two of us left in the finals, myself and another kid. And I think that they didn't want the same person to win the shootout competition 2 weeks in a row because I guess they kind of wanted to spread out the trophies a little bit. And I had also won the most improved player award that week, and
Yeah, I
so
could see that.
I wasn't coming out of that
Yeah.
week empty-handed already. And it's a good thing you asked me to tell this story because it prefaces the injury and the whole thing I'm going to go into.
Yeah.
But my favorite save was, you know, this sort of hot dog kick save on the blocker
This
side.
kind of Martin Brodeur kind of Montreal
Yeah.
Canadiens sort of thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so everybody's favorite was the glove side. For some reason, I just felt very comfortable on the blocker side, and I did this sort of hot dog kick save on the blocker side, and Dan Tessier was the one that was taking the shot. He was supposed to kind of eliminate me from that competition with flying colors and you know, make
Memorial
sure that
Cup
the other
championship. Even Dan Tessier couldn't eliminate you.
Yeah.
He remembered
the
that
other
like
kid
20 years
missed-
later. He still remembered that.
Yeah. The other kid had missed his shot. He had missed his save. And so if I stopped Dan's shot, I would win. So Dan really needed to score on this shot.
Right.
And this is honestly partially, in large part, pure dumb luck. But usually all the kids want to go for the glove side.
So you thought you were going to
I-
screw him up and do it on the opposite side that he anticipated that you were going to do. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always leave a little bit of extra room on the blocker side to give myself,
Oh, sure.
you know,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
likelihood, just to tempt them, if only subconsciously.
Yeah, because
So,
they're going to be inclined to pull the other direction. It's like, oh, she's going to go that way, and then. Yep.
exactly.
Makes sense to me.
So and I want to mention that this was, I think, 97 or 98.
Was that at
He
the
was the leading
Sensplex?
scorer.
Or was that?
He was the leading scorer of the 67s at the time, and it was a year or two before he was going to go on to win the Memorial Cup as the captain of that team. And he takes this shot to eliminate me from this competition. I did this hot dog blocker side save, and did the puck not hit the shaft of the stick?
Must have sounded like a gunshot, I'll bet.
It did, and it hit the rafters, and it was like that scene in the Mighty Ducks with in the Mighty Ducks 2 when he takes the shot and it goes off the post and it goes bing 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 and then hits Tibbles in the head.
Well worth it.
Well, it was like that. Um, Except it ricocheted off of a couple of the different rafters in the ceiling of the
Yeah.
arena and then went into the area where they do the off ice training. And he just came up to me and he said, you know you weren't supposed to stop that one.
It's like, you earned it.
And and so that was what I was bringing up to him in the episode. And
yeah, I kept that in. It went to broadcast like that. That was when we were at the Titan Performance Center with Lou.
It was funny because he makes it out like I don't know if it was to be a compliment or if he was just remembering it wrong because he was like,
he might have just been shitting you.
He was like, well, with little kids and everything, and I'm thinking, well,
and he's only a couple of years older than you.
Yeah, so I was 16.
Yeah.
I think I was only a few years younger than he was, and you know, there was only 2 of us that were teenagers in that class. Everybody else was little kids, but I mean, you get your skills and you need to learn how to deal with your goaltending, so. Right. So, of course, over the years, the hot dog, as Rick Hines used to call it, the hot dog save, that was the Martin Brodeur style. Throw all of your limbs in every which way so that either you look like a miracle worker and keep being sent to all-star games year after year after year until you're long past the age that anybody else would retire, or you know, you look like you're the hero. You went all out and beyond 150%. Everybody's coming up to you saying, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry that the defense wasn't there because wow, did you ever try?" And that was the strategy. That where was that? Where was that at the Sensplex? It would have been brand new though. I mean, they would have just in '97. They wouldn't even have. Well, they would have just finished what was then called the Palladium, and I don't know what the hell it's called now. The Canadian Tire Center, and what's it called now? I think it. I don't remember. Honestly, I have no. It has a different name almost every year. I always think of it as the Corral Center. Yeah, I remember that. I mean, the funny thing about that is, it takes 5 years for me to get used to whatever it is that they call it, and then by the time I have it down, they change it. Because at first it was the Palladium, and we knew that was going to wind up changing as soon as they got the naming rights to something. I'm trying to remember. I think Corral was the first naming rights, and then they had the naming rights for 5 years or 7 years or whatever. You used to work at Corral. And then, I'm trying to remember what it was after that. For a good long time, it was the Scotiabank Center. So Scotiabank... Scotiabank Center had the naming rights, and then it was the Canadian Tire Center for a good long time. I think it's some. They should have just called it the Canadian Tire because it's round. Yeah, well, I mean it's kind of an oval, so I don't know what kind of tire it would wind up being, but. Yeah, and it's funny because it's my hometown. From them, it's my hometown. I mean, I was born there, and I remember it was a big deal when they built the thing, because Eugene Melnick and all his guys, I mean, they were trying to get this going for years. And I remember going there just before it finished. They had like an open house, and it was a long time before I actually got to go there for a game. And then every game I went, we lost. And it was always to either Chicago, we always seemed to lose to Chicago, or we lost to Boston, or we lost, and they weren't a losing team in those days. I think the last game I went to the last time I went to a game was probably 2008 or something. It was something like that. That was the last time I went there for a game, because I was working with CTV at the time. And then, well,
at the time it was more CJOH, early days of, I guess, Bell Media takeover.
Guess what? Your audio's cutting out
Oh,
again.
is it?
Yeah, okay, it's back a little bit now.
Might also be because I'm rocking between different cameras as well. So, yeah, so what I was saying, and let me know if it cuts out, but we've got 2 completely different streams, so we should be in pretty good shape with buffering and that.
Well, I'll go on with the rest of this story and quick demonstration.
Yes, good idea.
Rick Hines. All right, so basically, I decided to go with the kick save as sort of my signature move. I really, really enjoyed it. It was very, very simple. If somebody was within the zone or they looked like they were going to take a wrist shot or a slap shot at the net, all I had to do was move slightly to my left, my glove side, and they would inevitably, time and time again, take the shot at the stick side, and I would do the stick side kick save. Now, if you've ever heard of repetitive strain injury, that probably was a factor. So over the years of doing it again and again and again and again, so I would go out, I really, really loved this game. So I would go out and I played on a rep team called the Avalanche, and this was out of Aurelia, and this was
that when you were at OVDCI?
Year.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah, OCDVI.
God, it sounds like a Scrabble game.
Yeah, ODCVI. Now I think formerly a school, then a crater, and now a condo, I think. But
people are buying condos in Aurelia? That's a scary thought.
People are making the mistake of thinking that that's a doable drive to Toronto.
It is not. You can't. A doable drive to Toronto, Aurelia is not as a daily commute. Just not happening. Sorry, I'm derailing your explanation here.
Even Cookstown is a stretch. The noticeable amount of weight that I've gained was when I was juggling doing the show with doing a job that had me commuting from Barrie to Toronto and unable to attend to the gym, and I'm still working that weight off now. I don't recommend
fact, she used to be a drive examiner for drive tests.
2 hours driving from where they live. It's just it just kills you. It's terrible for your life. It's terrible for your health. It's just so unbelievably terrible.
Not to mention staying on the Don Valley Parkway for 3.5 hours. That I remember. Just waiting, and you don't even move like a mile, and you've been there for 2.5 hours just trying to get out of traffic. It's stupid.
It's so defeating, and
I know. There's just no way out of that crap. And this is the problem with, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Toronto. Never had any issues when I was there. But the thing about Toronto is it's just the traffic. I mean, obviously not so much with the pandemic, but the pandemic eventually is going to end, and we are going to be dealing with the kinds of issues of traffic. It's just there's a lot of people in Toronto, and it's a bottleneck. So you're trying to go down the Don or the 401 or wherever, and you're just dealing with a ton of traffic, and there's just nowhere to go. I mean, they keep trying to extend it and add more lanes and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, there's only so much that it can do you.
At least they're adding subway stations.
Yeah, thank God for that.
And they're probably adding. Hopefully, they're adding more trains.
Yeah, that I heard they were going to do.
It doesn't get. I'm thinking that maybe they could do with a system like Chicago, where it goes above and then also have the one below and have them connected.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Because now there's so many.
That'd be really good.
There's so many different bus lines in Toronto.
Sure.
You
Absolutely.
got the green one and the blue one and the orange
one. And the purple one
and
and the green one.
TTC
Well, they don't have a purple one. At least they didn't when I was there. Maybe they have a purple one now.
They have a purple line, a subway line now. The other colors
that they had. Yeah, the
buses.
purple line was the Shepherd Young line. That was the new one.
Yeah.
Because when I was going to school, that was the one that they had, and that was the new one.
Back in the day,
Probably looks like
when
shit
I would take
now,
the subway, we just had the yellow and the green.
Yellow and green. Man.
Now I'm getting off topic. Okay,
My
so
fault. I was the one that
uh,
was going on and on and on, and I kind of derailed you while you were trying to talk about what you were going to what you were going to talk about.
that's
Sorry
all
about
right.
that. Sorry. Go ahead.
You always have time for Toronto traffic, and Toronto traffic always has time for you.
Yeah, I'll say.
Um, but so, um, all right. So basically, I would, my routine was that I would play for the Avalanche, and we would have 1 or 2 games a week,
Yeah.
and then we would have 1 or 2 practices a
Hmm.
week, and then we would have a tournament about once every month or two, and this was a lot of fun. It was incredibly expensive. It's probably much worse
Yeah, I'll
now,
bet.
and
Not
yeah,
cheap.
and no, and by the time I was independent and in the workforce and driving myself to play pickup hockey games in Ottawa, at that point, I had goalie equipment that I'd spent more on than my car. I was driving around in, an '02 Kia Rio with the doors practically falling apart, and I'm shoved in the back seat, $6,000 worth of goalie equipment. The car was only worth 4,000 new when I so well, new used, so to
New
speak. But
used. New
you go to
used.
a used car dealership in Laval, and you're not going to be getting something worth, more than
Oh,
a
for
few
sure.
thousand bucks
Oh, for
anyway.
sure.
But
Absolutely.
so so you have to remember that when I was playing back in Aurelia, I was doing those games and those practices. Only my training regiment on my own time was probably a healthy training regimen. I would do a half an hour on a treadmill, about 20 minutes on an
Yeah.
exercise bike, some crunches on probably the best abdominal machine. I'll never find a better one than
Yeah,
that
it's
one.
funny with
And
abdominal
then,
machines. Get the wrong one. Like,
yeah,
there's some abdominal machines that I just can't use. And others.
well, this one, if I could track it down, I would rescue it from whatever city dump it was at, and pay to have American Restoration put it back to the way it was in 1999, because this was just the most wonderful ab machine in the world. And
You want a bunch of
so I
300
use
pound
that.
laborers fixing a piece of gym equipment?
I would
I
pay
shouldn't say
probably
that.
upwards of 5 grand for that piece of gym equipment, which is probably worthless now and was probably worth about 2 grand back in the day. That's how good it was. And the only one that I think it was part of the Life Fitness. I think it was a Life Fitness brand.
Yeah, they make
I'm
nice stuff.
guessing because,
They make really nice
yeah,
stuff. They
and
make
then
the Life Fitness stuff. That and the pre-course stuff.
exactly.
Uh,
Nautilus made a
I
similar
remember
one.
those. Yep.
Um, and then the ones that I've tried since then have just there's always been some reason why it
Mm,
hurts the back or whatever. But and then I would do swimming laps, and then if there
that'll
was an
burn a ton.
aquafit class taking place after that, I would use that as a cool down, and do the aquafit with all of the retired ladies from the nursing home down the road. So
You would have burned a ton, an absolute ton of calories doing that stuff. That's for sure.
yeah, exactly.
No
Exactly.
bones about it.
And I was a vegetarian. I had not developed a dairy allergy yet, so I was still having a lot of dairy, but I was a vegetarian, and it still took me a long time to get fit and lose weight, even on that routine. There's something to be said for how difficult it is for anybody with Dutch heritage, that's for sure. But I felt good,
Well, you
and
just
that
keep
was
at
that
it.
was fantastic. It was a fantastic time in my
Yep.
life. But I was what I didn't realize was that I was slowly but surely um, rotting away or damaging a tendon in my leg
Mm.
by um, my left leg. So if you were looking right at me, it would be your right, my left, or my glove side leg. Never felt like it was quite as flexible as my right leg, my stick side leg. And so that was part of the reason why I had started doing saves on my stick side, on my blocker side, But because of being so quick with them and so good with them, I ended up doing all of them that way. And I would only do butterfly saves with both legs, and I would do all of my kick saves on my blocker's side, and nobody ever found out or noticed or used it against me that I couldn't do them on the other side. They just didn't know.
Makes sense.
But I'm not sure if you can see this. Now, Dr. Rainier, so this is,
Yeah, I can see it.
so it's going to be spelled backwards, but that tendon is a tendon that goes from the
flipped.
groin.
It's not backwards.
Yeah.
It's flipped.
Oh, perfect. So it's called the, I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, adductor tendon. And it goes.
Move it just a little bit over.
Muscle.
I wish I knew you were going to put that in then, because then I could have just taken the graphic and we could have switched to it. There you go.
Well,
I
I found it when we were getting started, actually.
There you go.
So that tendon goes from now I don't want to say this with any exact certainty. This is something
We'll
that
check with Dr. Rainier and ask him.
I talked to Dr. Rainier on Instagram, and I was asking if a partial tear or a problem with that tendon would be possibly responsible for having pain in the groin.
Didn't he say it was?
Well as in the lower back on the same side.
I think he said it was possible, didn't he? I can't remember. Yeah, I thought he did. I wasn't sure. I was pretty sure that he had. It was a little while ago, though.
Exactly, and I'm very, very interested in medicine and sports medicine, so I've been looking that up anyway. But I would notice that when I would take very, very long walks, that after taking a very, very long walk, I would develop pain in the groin as if I had had a really bad groin pull just that day. And I usually did, I was usually pretty much on the ball with stretching for hockey.
So it's repetitive. It's basically like taking a wire and bending it back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Eventually, it will thin out and fail structurally.
Exactly. And then when we did segments with Human 2.0 in Ottawa before moving our production studio over to Saskatchewan, I had talked to Dr. Rainier about some of the stuff to do with stretching, and there was he was going over the two types of stretching. The type that you think about when you think about workout programs from the 1980s where they're doing this and they're doing that and stretching and touching the toes, and then but he was teaching me more of an active form of stretching where you do sort of a low impact cardiovascular type workout before doing the event, and then you do that stretching after as a way of sort of making sure that the muscles don't seize up. For most of the time that I played hockey, I did not know that such a routine existed. So I would go out there and I would do the regular stretching beforehand, and that was better than nothing. Most of the time I could avoid a groin pull. The Leaside High School team, their coaching staff, and I won't go into too much negativity with that because I know that the gentleman passed away and never speak ill of the dead.
I will. What side of the street do you live on?
No, it's all right. But the coaching staff there.
She'll complain about him later. Sorry, go ahead.
The one gentleman got really up in arms over the fact that when I would play at that level, I wouldn't do butterfly saves or kick saves during warm-ups. So in a sense, I was inadvertently doing the Human 2.0 technique of doing a physical warm-up and then, doing that stretching later.
That makes sense.
And you got to also remember that when I was playing with Leaside High School, this is before my days with the Avalanche. This is before my days with Rick Hines. I was using antique leather pads, so they would absorb the water.
So they're going to get a lot heavier. It's going to make it more difficult to move.
The last thing that you would need is to have them get to be 10 or 20% heavier before the game would even start. I would be starting out with a disadvantage. There was no backup goalie if something went
How do you
wrong. I
compensate for
got out
something like
there.
that? How do you compensate for
Yeah.
that?
So, I mean, basically, I tried to learn stand-up goaltending techniques from old books from goaltenders that had written books about the how to do
Smart.
goaltending from back time when those pads
Yep.
existed.
Yep.
So,
Makes sense to me.
I had a book that I had been studying that was, the Russian team from the 1970s. And then even some of the stuff, Patrick Waugh made a how-to video. And I don't, if anybody can get their hands on this, it is honest to goodness so funny. The Patrick Waugh how-to video from the 1980s. And I don't know who cut this. The one thing I remember from it, and he was teaching about stand-up goaltending techniques. This is funny because he ended up being one of the butterfly goaltenders that everybody thought of when they thought of that. But
Yep.
the equipment is what dictates the moves, and that is the whole point of today's episode. But if you ever have the opportunity, if you ever see an old 1980s how-to video from Patrick Waugh, it is worth going to a thrift store to buy a VCR to hook up to watch because it is so funny. At the end, he's reiterating that if anybody scores on a wraparound, that it's your fault if you're the goaltender, which is fundamentally true. I mean, it's really inexcusable to let a wraparound shot go in, and we're not talking about the ones where they do it like they're playing lacrosse and up in the air. They're talking about a wraparound shot down on the ice level. And so you watch this video, and at the end, and he's like, if somebody scores on a wraparound shot, it's your fault. And then he has an echo that goes, your fault, your fault, your
That's
fault.
the 80s for you.
Just so funny. Yeah. But so the equipment dictates what you do. And so here's what happens with the why it's possible, why I believe in, and I'm not a doctor. Hopefully one day I can get to that point. But
You'll get there.
but my guess, based on being a player and based on being just trying to understand the human body, is that
Tilt. Go lie down. Go lie down in your spot.
The reason why getting groin pulls was considered part of the job with goaltending for so many years was because of the way that the equipment was built. You would have pads that were strapped onto you with multiple straps, and so this is why I got this ball jointed doll so that I could demonstrate basically. So I made these little pads, and so take a look at the back. They're very rough, but give a good idea of basically how they were on. They were flat, and at the back you would have straps that would go all the way to the knees. Sometimes you would have straps that would come around the thighs here, and then they would go right in the knee joint there. Now, in order to do a butterfly save, this would be the beginner butterfly. The beginner butterfly save, you just would go down on your knees. That doesn't do anything. You would need to have the pads twisted out. But you can see that the human leg isn't really made to do that.
You might need to just pull out just a bit. There we go.
All right,
now,
so there,
now we can see the feet and the everything.
So you'd need to twist. You need to twist your knee in order to twist the pad.
Oh,
and that would be
yeah.
unnatural.
Yeah, so you're creating a lot of tension, and that wouldn't be good for the tendon at all, especially if you're doing it over and over and over and over.
Exactly. Right. And then
that
this is, you can see this pad, if she were to go down on her knees like this and just kind of twist at the hip and go straight down on her knees, the pad wouldn't be the pad would not be getting very much. If somebody was shooting the puck, it would go over and the leg would be exposed. These pads were originally designed for people to be standing up goaltending. The development of the butterfly save was a development that involved doing something to the human body that should not be done. So I'm going to get, I've got a little example of how the new pads are built.
Oh, cool.
And then I'll show you that.
That's very cool.
Because, and the old pads also, one more thing, they would have these toe straps that would go down here. And so your foot wouldn't have any maneuverability either. So when you would do a butterfly save, the only thing that would be protecting your foot is basically the exoskeleton on the goalie skate. So
That'd
this
make
is
it
how,
tough. That'd make it real tough.
exactly. Now this is how the new pads are built. The new pads, they may look the same from the front, and a lot of people, including myself, at first glance said, wow, they looked ugly. No design was put into these things. It looks like marshmallows. But here's the clincher. I don't know if you can see this, but
yeah, I can see it.
They're actually built like this, where they're like an L shape. Okay, so I'll take one with the doll to demonstrate here. So if at the front the pad would look the same,
right.
Okay, but if the player goes down on the one knee and then swivels the leg, what happens is that the knee ends up going onto the regular part of the pad because the straps are a lot looser, or onto the I might actually be on the wrong side here. All right, so we're going to go with this.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn it around this way so that you can see that the knee is actually now resting on the L shape of the pad.
Yeah, I see it.
And that this part of the pad is now covering the ice. So if she does a butterfly save, then she's got the whole part of the pad open to stop the puck here.
So it can swivel without actually putting any tension and requiring you to twist. It basically it almost has a hinge right in the it almost has a hinge right in the pad.
Exactly. And then if I turn this around,
being an idiot,
you can see that it's made for the knee to be resting right on that other part of the pad, just like that. And the pad is what's twisting and stopping the puck
instead of your leg,
rather than your knee twisting to move the pad into position.
And that would make a
huge
huge difference in terms of any injuries or anything that you would sustain, because you don't keep taking that tendon and all that stuff and basically bending it again and again and again and again.
Exactly. So what I was noticing after years and years and years and years and years of doing these kick saves, where my leg would be twisted in order to have that real estate of the pad facing the player, and then what would happen is that if I would go on a long walk, and I liked to go hiking and go on long walks, but after long walks, I would find that I would have this pain that would feel like I had the worst groin pull of my life, and I would also have a pain in the lower back. And the pain in the lower back would be right as if it was behind the hip. So it would feel like it was in that area of the pelvis, where if you look at a cross section of a pelvis, you'll see that, or if you look at a picture of a pelvic bone, then there's a couple of holes in there where you would have a socket for the hip joint. And this adductor tendon that I showed you earlier, that's the one. It looks like one, if not the only, but one of very few tendons that is connected at the groin and also going right through that hole and connected at the back of the pelvic bone.
That's crazy.
So
that's very cool.
So if I was showing you on the doll, it would be right there, right where the just below the waistband of a pair of pants, and so it might worry you, making you think that maybe you have something wrong with a kidney, or that maybe you're having low back
Yeah.
strain from doing improper sit-ups. But what was unique was that this groin pain, that felt like it was deep in the groin. So basically where that hip joint is, and that the pain was coming right through to the lower back. What was unique about it compared to a lot of people's, back problems from, say, lifting something improperly or whatever, was that it was consistently on my right side. It was on that kick save side. And it didn't interfere in my life too much, besides if I was standing around for a very long period of time, or if I walked for a very long time, and I would try to fix it with footwear. So footwear it would either make things 10 times worse or a little bit better. And so one of the times that this happened, I had walked a very, very long way in Barrie, Ontario. I had walked from the area where the hotels are on that highway exit near downtown,
That's a
and I'd
hell of a
walked all the
schlep.
way up. Yeah, I'd walked all the way from I want to say Best Western, all the way up to um, Bayfield Mall or Bayshore Mall. I can't remember the name of
Bayfield.
it. Bayfield Mall, I
Bayfield
think it
Mall, yeah.
is. Yeah, and I'd walked all the way up to Bayfield Mall, and I went to Sport Check, and I tried on a pair of Solomon walking shoes or hiking shoes, and that took away probably about 30 or 40% of the pain.
Yeah, they make
Um,
nice stuff. Nice
the,
shoes.
yeah, the only problem is, years later, I bought them for the purpose of getting rid of this problem, but because of the goalie skates causing the dislocations of the big toes and these
Oh, yeah.
lumps
No, that makes
on the
sense.
sides,
Makes sense.
the shoes were too narrow. So I think that the only way I'm going to be able to solve that problem is to get, I know your friend Joe spent some time in Norway, and he got a pair of those same shoes, and the ones that they made in Norway were actually, they had a wider variety. So I might have to do a schlep to Norway if I really want Solomon's to fix this problem,
Well,
or
we won't
maybe I
have a
can
problem
find.
going to Norway or getting them from Joe. So we'll get Joe to pick us some up in
Yeah,
Norway.
yeah. So
Pick us some
and
up. I don't know if that's grammatically correct. I am leaning towards no. But anyway.
or maybe I'll contact the manufacturer and see if they have any in North America. But but again, that was a Band-Aid solution. I've the whole thing with feet from goaltending. I'll tell you that it, as a former goaltender that is interested in potentially going after a career in medicine, um, people look at me sideways when they say, "Oh, what kind of medicine do you want to go into?" And I say, "Oh, well, either GP sports medicine or podiatry." Not to be podiatrist, not to be confused with pediatrics. It's not medicine for children. It's medicine for
That's
the
medicine
feet.
for the foot. Yeah,
As
for
soon
sure.
as you tell somebody that you're interested in podiatry, they start to wonder whether or not you're into feet. Um, and but believe me, there's a motivation. There's a very, very selfish motivation for a former hockey player to want to go into podiatry, because you will be up at night staring at the ceiling, thinking, gee, I wonder if this would fix this pain. I wonder if that would fix this pain. I wonder if this would make me able to walk without this problem. And so that's, it's a very, very selfish motivation. To
It's
be
very
honest,
practical motivation, I would say. Just it helps to be able to self-diagnose to a degree, and then from that point of view, it at least gives you a starting point. So I could see that.
exactly. I honestly probably if I went into medicine and I was a GP, it would be very tempting to give every kid that came into the office a basketball. Say, do that. Try
It's like,
here.
here, just take
Here's
your
a free.
basketball and take your basketball and here, try
uh,
this.
save yourself and your parents the strain, hassle, and expenditure of thousands of dollars of equipment, and then subsequently thousands of dollars of medical bills, depending on where you are in the world, or thousands of dollars of rehabilitation, or hundreds of thousands of dollars when you decide that you want to go to medical school to fix your feet. But and not that that's the only motivation, but so now here's where Rick Hines comes in. So I went to Rick Hines with a pair of these pads, and they had a pair of these pads, which I did try on at Source for Sports to demonstrate how weird it would feel to put on a pair of pads that I wasn't used to. And the one benefit of my Browns that I had bought back in 1998 was that they were ahead of their time when it came to lightweight. They were probably the only pads from the 90s that were as lightweight as the pads today. So that's the one thing that they have going for them. But they're a stand-up goaltending pad, and that back in the day, you had to disfigure your limbs in order to use them for some of those moves. And now there is a whole other set of moves that are designed for these pads. And so the parts of the episode that you'll see cut out was that basically I said, okay, well, this will be fun. And this is famous last words. This will be fun. Let's try some of the new moves with the old pads and show how the new equipment makes a difference. And I was thinking, makes a difference with ease of use, makes a difference with stopping the puck. I wasn't thinking makes a difference as in it's not even physically possible to do some of the new moves in the old equipment. So one thing I want to mention about these, besides having this nice little area to rest your leg, this narrow part of the pad is also slippery. So they designed a move called the sliding butterfly save, where your pads come out like this. Your legs are resting on this area, but this surface is sliding on the ice. So you can go down on your knees and slide at the same time across the net on this slippery surface. And I wasn't really thinking in terms of the science behind that when I was shooting the episode. I was thinking, okay, well, let's try to do it. I'll try to do it. I'll try to do a sliding butterfly save in the old pads, and then we'll get the other goaltender to demonstrate how, when you do it in the new pads, you see more surface area of the pad outwards to stop the puck, or how it's faster or more efficient in that sense. I was not fully prepared for what happened. What ended up happening, I tried it to kind of the play it with kid gloves version a couple of times, and it didn't seem to be working. Now, I made the mistake of thinking that maybe I just wasn't trying hard enough, or that I needed to not be afraid to fall down and just give it a go. So wearing the old pads, I forced to try to do this and kind of threw myself sideways to do this sliding butterfly save. But what ended up happening was that I caught the edge of a skate blade, and I ended up kind of up in the air. And when I ended up in the air on my back, my legs, which would have been like this with the pads on them, kind of turned out sideways. So it popped the hip joint out on both sides, and then, or at least it felt like it popped the hip joint out on two sides. I don't think I can even do this. I can't even do this with the ball jointed doll, because it's made to work similarly to the human body, and the human body is not supposed to do that, apparently, and this is why this happened. So the hip joints turned sideways, and my back hit the ice, and my head went down, and I felt my hips pop, and I was just kind of lying on the ice for a moment. I think I gave Cory and the cameraman a scare there. And I was actually hoping I'd be able to get up and stand up after that, because again, it was sort of like the worst groin pull of your life times 5, and then not too bad a blow to the back of the head. I had a heck of a blow to the back of my head a few weeks ago, but it wasn't too bad on the ice. It was mostly this hip joint. Now, what I noticed after that was that this severe groin pain and lower back pain would start happening a lot sooner. I didn't have to go on a 2-hour hike to get this pain kick in. All I had to do was stand in line at the grocery store for more than 5 minutes not moving to have this pain kick in. I could go and I could walk the dog, but I had to be aware of the fact that if I was going to go for a short walk, that I had to live with the fact that I was going to have this pain in my groin and have this pain in my lower back if I would go out and walk the dog. And it's, the lower back pain, it's almost worse just standing around. If I go to the museum or something like that to look around, I'm not going to be one of the people that's standing around reading the plaques, or I have to keep moving my legs around the whole time. But and hopefully I can find some decent footwear that compensates for that. But I'm also hoping that at some point in the next few years, after all the COVID stuff is done with, that I can team up with Dr. Rainier and we can figure out whether or not my guess is correct about this being the adductor tendon, and whether or not that injury that happened when we were trying to shoot that episode made a strain into a partial tear, or how to repair that. And so that's why that episode was never completed. That's why I've never been shown getting out with goalie equipment. And that's why, as of some of the later episodes, I changed it. I changed my statement from saying I play hockey to I played hockey for 15 years, because I made a judgment call after that I was going to unfortunately call it a career and end it where it started. I had really enjoyed all of those years doing this, and so on to new things. I really want to get into archery and some other sports, and it's been an amazing opportunity to do all these episodes, but the reason why I can't do any goaltending in an episode or try any of the new goaltending techniques is because of this. I just don't want to. I can't risk it. It's not worth having it tear completely, because that would put me out of commission for the rest of the stuff. And so, I sold most of the equipment on the wonderful wide world of Kijiji there.
I'm just going to cut in a little bit. I keep forgetting that I can see you, but you can't necessarily see me.
I cannot. I can see a Skycron logo on my end.
Well, whenever I need to,
I don't want to put any more strain on my system and have your audio cut out.
No, that makes sense.
But that's basically the end of that story anyway. So that's basically why that episode has a bizarre looking intro.
Well, I was just trying to give a visual cue that we've actually been broadcasting for well over an hour and 15 minutes. So we should probably wrap it up. And I was kind of giving you a visual cue, and then I realized you couldn't see me because you kept going on.
I could not see
It's all right.
I could not see
Well, clearly this setup with SaskTel is far better than what we had. So once again, I should give a shout out to SaskTel for this system. It works fantastically, and it's completely mobile. So, I'm pretty happy with it. And the first test has gone pretty well. But so, Em, if it's all right with you, we should probably wrap this up for tonight, and then make sure everybody tunes in next week. So we want to make sure that people are tuning in. So for all of you that are watching tonight, thank you very much. Make sure to tune in for the Go Nitro Throwback Thursdays. We are always live 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. We are going to have more guests as things progress, and if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner, and make sure you go to gonitro.tv. And the other thing I also wanted to mention is if there's anything that you want to see on the Go Nitro television series on any of the stations that we are running on, by all means, email us, contact us, leave a comment. We always want to hear from you, and very likely it'll probably wind up being an episode if we haven't already done it. The other thing I also wanted to mention is for our viewers in Canada, Go Nitro airs on the Game Plus network at 6:30 Eastern every Monday night, so make sure to tune in. Thanks very much, and thanks for watching.